Welcome to the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. My name is Frank. I'm the host of the show. This is a podcast where I discuss and review movies, new and old. So if you're joining me live right now, welcome. The show is available when I record live on Facebook. Let Me Bend Your Ear is the tag. On Twitter at Bend Your Ear Pod. Also on Twitch live. The show's YouTube page is Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. So if you're scrolling on tonight or happen to be on one of those, or if on YouTube you get the notification that I'm on, feel free to join into the show. If you want to talk to me either via chat or actually get on the show, let me know. I'm going to put the link in the chat box right now. If you want to join live, let me know while we're recording this episode. So tonight is going to be a review of West Side Story. So before I get into the review, just a little housekeeping as I always do. You can find this audio podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Amazon Music, and Podbean. If you don't listen to podcasts on a podcatcher, you can always download all of the episodes that you'd like from the website. The show's website is letmebendyourear.com. If you want to email the show, you can email me at bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. If you have suggestions on movies for me to review, any feedback on the show, any and all emails would be appreciated. Two things I would ask: if you're a follower of the show, or if you listen to the show, if you can like and share my posts on social media, specifically on Twitter when I have new episodes out, or any of the video episodes. If you can like those and share those, that'd be great. The second thing, if you do listen to this show on a podcasting app such as Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, if you can rate and review the show, that's a huge way you can help the show reach a larger audience, which is always the goal, especially for an independent podcaster like myself. Word of mouth is the key to getting the show recognized and people to find it if they're looking for a new movie podcast. So if you could do that, I really appreciate it. All right. So tonight I'm going to discuss and review West Side Story, the remake directed by Steven Spielberg. So in the interest of full disclosure, and I've mentioned this on this podcast before, I am not a fan of musicals. I'm not a big fan of them. There are two exceptions to that rule. One is going to be Singing in the Rain, the Gene Kelly classic with Debbie Reynolds and Donald O'Connor. Love that film. And Grease, 1978. Love those two musicals. And I'll review those at some point each for the podcast. Those are my two exceptions. It's not to say I hate musicals. I've seen The Sound of Music, which I thought was good, directed by Robert Wise, who also actually directed the original version of West Side Story. I've never seen the original West Side Story, so this review is not going to come anywhere with the perspective of comparing it to the first movie, because I've never seen the first movie. Because frankly, I have never had a desire to see the first movie. And like I said, to be completely honest, there's two reasons I'm going to review West Side Story that I actually ended up watching it, or three reasons. One, it ended up streaming on Disney Plus, so I was able to watch it. Two, it's directed by Steven Spielberg, one of my favorite directors. And three, the movie pretty much achieved universal acclaim from the critics as far as it being a high quality film. So those are the three reasons I'm going to review it for the show. All right, so of course, everybody is aware of West Side Story, even me being not the musical fan. So the original version, again, like I said, was directed by the great Robert Wise. It starred Natalie Wood. Rita Moreno won an Academy Award for her performance as Anita in that film. And she is in the new version of West Side Story as well. And I'll get to that when I get into the review of this film. So obviously, the movie was based on the classic musical by Stephen Sondheim. And I think Jerome Robbins did the choreography for the original film. And again, like I said, Robert Wise directed it. Considered a classic musical. I know some people have some criticisms of it, today in the area that we look, and the lens that we look through in 2021, specifically, obviously, with Natalie Wood playing a Puerto Rican and just kind of some of the portrayals. And like I said, I haven't seen the movie, so I don't really have any comment on the original film. So let's get right into the review. So West Side Story is set in New York, of course, and the main characters are Maria and Tony. So Maria is Puerto Rican, and Tony is a white guy from New York. So they meet at a dance, and in the backdrop of this, you have this is the time as the film opens where there's kind of the clearing out of the slums and a lot of things going on. And there's racial tension in the city, in the area that they're at, between Puerto Rican gang and a white Irish, or whatever the white gang is, the Sharks and the Jets. So those two gangs are kind of warring for turf, and kind of has that antagonistic relationship, and this is a lower income section of New York City. Obviously you have immigrants, or obviously Puerto Ricans not being immigrants, they're citizens of the United States, but obviously New York being the melting pot, you have immigrants from all around the world, and they're working their way, struggling, working their life in New York. So Tony and Maria meet at a dance and have an instant connection. And it's a very simple story. So Tony ends up liking Maria. Maria's living with her brother and her brother's girlfriend, Anita. And so obviously they find out about her attraction to Tony. They're not happy about it. They wanted to date, a Puerto Rican boy. There's a Puerto Rican boy that they kind of set her up with, that actually takes her to the dance where she ends up meeting Tony. And at the backdrop of this, you find out Tony has been in jail for a year for assaulting someone, and he has just gotten out. And he was, of course, with the Jets. And Riff, the leader of the gang, wants him to get back into the gang to do this rumble against the Sharks, obviously for territory. So the winner of that rumble obviously will have territory of the area and own that particular area, whatever own means, even though they don't really own anything. It's really more a matter of kicking another gang out of the area. So again, with the backdrop of that racial tension and then the love story, that's basically that's basically the setup for the film. It's a very simple story. Now, as far as why I am not a fan of musicals, just generally speaking, is it's tough for me. And like I said, this is my personal thing. I know there's plenty of people that love musicals that are huge fans of them. Is I can't get around the movie or the characters in the movie breaking into song. So let me start there with this version of West Side Story. Like I said, I haven't seen the first one. In this film, I found it less of an issue than I would have normally find in other musicals. So, there's some great songs. Now, it doesn't take away my appreciation, even in musicals that I haven't seen, of some of the great lyrics, the great music, the composers that write great songs. And on their own, there's wonderful songs in all kinds of musicals. The best example I can give in the last 30, 40 years is obviously Disney. Some of my favorite movies those are all essentially musicals. And the great Alan Menken, the late Howard Ashman, the late Alan Menken, and then Howard Ashman, that wrote the lyrics and the music for those Disney films in the Renaissance, starting with The Little Mermaid. Those songs are fantastic. There's a lot of great songs, a lot of great music. If you go to the modern time, the music in Moana is fantastic. The music in Coco, the songs are fantastic. So I do have an appreciation, and maybe that's just a bias on my part, that I can handle a musical in an animated form, not so much in the live action. So that's probably a bias on my part. So not that I'm totally against musicals, it's just in the format that they're presented. I don't really love them in live action. But like I said, in West Side Story, in Spielberg's film, the songs are really good, and it didn't bother me as much. I mean, like I said, it still takes me out of it a little bit. But again, it wasn't too dramatic. And the story is, like I said, is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. As Maria and Tony are trying to navigate their relationship to try to get something started, you have the tension between her and her brother and her brother's girlfriend about what's going on. You have the tension between the two gangs. You have the tension with the police, because the police are trying to keep peace in that area. And then obviously you have the backdrop of immigrants and people that are already here, and the either it's the racism or just the mistrust of someone that's not like yourself. So that's a recurring theme throughout this film of West Side Story. So on the technical part of it, this is where the movie shines for me. So you have Steven Spielberg, of course. He is one of the best filmmakers in using the camera, and the dance sequences and the music sequences in these films are beautifully shot. Now, I know he's used his regular cinematographer here, Janusz Kaminski, and I think he's used him on every film of his since Schindler's List. I don't think he shot Jurassic Park. I have to double check, but I know he shot Schindler's List, and I think he shot every Spielberg, or almost all the Spielberg films since then. So that's basically his go-to cinematographer. And It is beautifully shot. There's vibrant. The city has the vibrant colors, even in the areas of not the slum area, but tenement buildings or old buildings. It's just beautifully shot, and the staging of the musical sequences are phenomenal. So the camera moves, or the camera stays on entire sequences of people dancing. It's just beautifully shot. So technically speaking, West Side Story is pretty flawless. And coming from Spielberg and Kaminsky as the cinematographer, that's not surprising. And there's definitely modern updates. Like I said, I haven't seen the original version, but Tony Kushner, the acclaimed screenwriter, wrote the screenplay for this version of West Side Story. I mean, he's worked with Spielberg twice before, I believe, on Munich and on Lincoln. And he's the acclaimed playwright of Angels in America. So screenplay, like I said, is good. I mean, I think it adds the modern touches. Some of the things I've listened to on other reviews, and when I noticed myself, the characters, the Puerto Rican characters, speak Spanish, and there's no subtitles. So for me, I have a working understanding of Spanish. So most of the conversations that were in Spanish, I was able to pick up. So, but if you don't speak Spanish at all, that might be a little bit of a challenge. It doesn't happen all that much. Some of the reviews I read, or some of the people I've listened to talk about it, made it sound like it was a lot more than it was, but maybe it didn't seem like it to me because I do understand Spanish. I'm not fluent, but I understood enough to understand what they were saying. And I think in the way the film is presented, you should be able to pick up most of what they're saying within the context of the scene. So I don't think it's that much of a stumbling block. I mean, for me, I think if I was directing the film, I think I would have put subtitles in there, just because I would want anyone watching the film to really understand what the characters are saying. Still have them speak Spanish, which I think is fine, because that's what they do, and that's what they would do in real life. They would speak Spanish, even if they're bilingual. If they're speaking at home with their family, they're going to speak Spanish, and that's how the film portrays. And I think that was an intentional decision, which was fine. Like I said, I probably would have put subtitles, but again, that's just a choice that Spielberg made. And like I said, for me, it wasn't too distracting. So again, the technical work on the film is great. So let me get to the cast. I'm going to start with Maria. She's played by Rachel Ziegler. I believe this is her first movie role. And I thought she was really good. I thought she was great as Maria, kind of tough, but, tender, kind of played it both ways. And my favorite performance in the film, there's two that I really liked, or three that I really liked. So my favorite was Ariana DeBose playing Anita, who is Maria's brother's girlfriend. So that's who she lives with. They live together. I thought she was fantastic. I've never seen her before, but she lights up the screen when she's on it. Her performance was fiery. She was funny. She was tough. I loved everything about that performance. That was definitely by far my favorite performance in the movie as Anita. My other favorite performance was Rita Moreno. Now, I know she won an Academy Award for playing Anita in the original West Side Story. In this film, her character's name is Valentina. So she owns a bodega in the neighborhood there, and her character had married a Caucasian gentleman, and they both ran this bodega store, five and dime, whatever you want to call it. And she is a friend to Tony. When Tony gets out of jail, she gives him work. She cares for him. She knows that deep down he's a good guy that just, was hanging with the wrong crowd and just made some mistakes. So she's basically one of his supporters. But her performance in the movie is really good because her character's kind of stuck between two worlds because she married a Caucasian man. She's obviously Puerto Rican, and there's tension that came with that. And you see the tension played out in the movie as well, which I thought she was fantastic. She was really good. And my other favorite performance is actually Riff. So Riff is the leader of the Jets when Tony is away in jail. So he's played by an actor I've never seen before, Mike Faust. I thought actually he was really good. I liked his performance and as the leader and kind of the guy. You can see that, Tony's character is portrayed as someone that's kind of, smart, kind of trying to look into the future, where Riff is basically, this is our lot in life. This is as good as it's going to get. All we have in our life is our territory and our little area of the world. And there's really nowhere to explore after that. Because I think that's one of the themes that this movie portrays as well. When you're in an area with a lot of poverty and you struggle financially, it it puts people in a position where I think that they think that their little area, their block, their city, their neighborhood, their building is really the entire world. There's really nothing outside of that. And so anything you can get in that little world and make yourself okay is all you focus on. You don't think bigger than that. You don't think outside of that, because in your mind, there's no option outside of that. That's not even something that's feasible. So I think in the portrayal of Riff, I think you see that in there, and he does a great job in the film. So that was my third favorite performance. Now, the one performance that I'm going to criticize is Tony. So the actor that plays him is Ansel Elgort. I've never seen him before. So his performance to me as Tony, and he's the other lead in the film, obviously the lead of the couple, is just, I don't know. He was likable enough, and it wasn't an awful performance, but it was just blah. Like, for the lead in this particular movie and the story that it's telling, I didn't feel he had no charisma to me. I just felt like he was kind of bland. And, and that's tough, because in the movie, it's really instant. The way the movie shows it, it's really love at first sight. They meet each other at this dance and they click. So if that's going to be the case, and if you're going to do that in a movie, then both leads, the female and the male lead, have that spark, that chemistry, that charisma that you go, oh wow, these two really would be attracted to each other. And just here, Maria was great, but Elgort as Tony just did not really do anything for me as far as charisma, any of that. So his performance to me, I thought, was lacking. Like I said, he's likable. He's a good looking guy, but that performance didn't click for me. And it really hurt my enjoyment of the movie, because it should have been more than that. But again, my overall impression of the film is that I thought the film was good. Did I think the film was great? No. And like I said, I'm going to disagree with critics that loved it, said it's one of the best movies of the year. But again, all honesty, musicals are a tough one for me. So even a musical that maybe would be considered one of the best films of the year by most critics and most people that watched it, I'm probably not going to be as high on it. But what I will say, like I said, the things that I did like about it was some of the performances that I've already mentioned were fantastic. They gave it their all. They did their best. They did a great job. I was really impressed by the performances. And like I said, the music was, the songs obviously are classic songs. So the songs are they're good songs. So when they're performed in the film, they're great to watch. And like I said, it didn't take me out of it like I thought it would and other movies have in the past. So while it took me out somewhat, definitely not to the level that I expected it to be. So for that, I give it a hearty compliment that it wasn't as distracting as I thought it was going to be going in. So I was pleasantly surprised about that. So those are the positive things I have to say about West Side Story. I will say, if you are a fan of musicals, I think you will like it. Now, if you've seen the first one, I don't know what your opinion is going to be in comparison. Like I said, I have not seen the first one, so I can't offer even that response or comparison. It's a modern update of it, and all the things that they've changed about it. So based on that review, I'm going to give West Side Story 3.5 Van Goghs out of 5. So on my scale, 3.5 means that it was a good movie. Not to me a great movie. It wouldn't be a movie that I would watch again. I'd give it as far as recommending you watch it, it would be a qualified recommendation. So basically what that means is, if you are a huge fan of musicals and even a huge fan of Spielberg, I probably would check it out. If you're really not a fan of musicals, and that's really, they do nothing for you, then maybe I would skip it. But like I said, there is a lot of the movie that there is to like about it. But I will give it 3.5. So like I said, that's a good movie to me. Not a great movie. It's not a movie that I would revisit, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It just means it's not a particular movie for me that I would go back and revisit. So again, on my scale, it's 3.5 Van Goghs out of 5 for West Side Story. Directed by Steven Spielberg, screenplay by Tony Kushner, and like I said, the wonderful cinematography by Janusz Kaminski. Like I said, the cinematography, the direction are the highlights of the movie, and like I said, the performances that I brought out in the film that I enjoyed were really enjoyable and made the film way more enjoyable than I would have thought it would be, with me not being partial to musicals. So I definitely would would recommend those performances. And I think those are the standouts of the movie. So again, you're watching and listening to the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. I'll be live here for a couple of more minutes. I have the link in the chat. I do see we have a viewer on. So hello out there, whoever's watching. If you want to go into the chat and say hi, tell me where you're watching from. If you don't mind, I'd appreciate it. And if you want to even come on for a minute or two, that'd be fantastic. We can talk about West Side Story, Spielberg, or like I said, if anyone that decides to come on the show, we just make that immediately open for them. So if you want to talk about something unrelated to West Side Story regarding movies, I'm down for that. So you got a couple of minutes if you want to come on, if you're not shy. So again, this is the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. My name is Frank, the host of the show. I discuss and review movies new and old. And you can find this podcast, again, wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, CastBox, and Amazon Music. You can download episodes anytime you want from the website, which is letmebendyourear.com. The email for the show is bendyourpodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow the YouTube channel. You'll get notifications whenever I go live. That is Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. The show is also available on Twitter. The Twitter handle is @BendYourEarPod, which is also the handle for Twitch and for Instagram. So again, if you find the show on social media, if you could share this post, I would appreciate it. If you can rate and review the show, I would also appreciate it. Again, my downloads have gone up recently, which I'm very happy about. So thank you to all of you out there that either are regular fans of the show or have tried the show out. I am very appreciative. Like I always say in every episode, I enjoy doing the show because I enjoy talking movies. So whether it's one person listening or 100 people or 1,000, it's great. But I do want to grow the show, which is why I've added this video component to hopefully engage the audience further. But again, thank you so much if you listen to the show. And like I said, email me at bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any suggestions or thoughts on movies you want me to review, I'll be happy to read and respond. And if you follow me on Twitter at BendYourEarPod and on Instagram, I'll definitely follow you back. So again, that's my review of West Side Story, directed by Steven Spielberg. Again, I give that movie 3.5 Van Goghs out of 5. So I hope everybody takes care out there, has a wonderful weekend, and I will be on very soon. Take care.